Hello, everyone. Welcome to Health Accelerator. We are streaming from a new platform. So, do me a favor. If you are watching live, just go ahead and drop a hashtag live on whichever platform you're watching on. We're streaming across a couple of different platforms. So I just want to make sure it's working. I did test it, so I do think it is working, but I just want to be sure as I go back and look at comments. So if you're watching live, just go ahead, drop a hashtag live. If you're watching the replay, just drop hashtag replay in the chat and I'll be able to go back and see that a little later. So super excited to be coming to you tonight. For those of you who don't know me or who are fairly new to the program, Carly Grinner. And so I want to share with you quickly how I got through the holiday season when I first started Health Accelerator. Because as you know, I was successful in losing 1 pound 113 times, so 113 pounds total with Health Accelerator and the strategies that we talk about on these classes, right? And so I want to share with you because I still remember starting Health Accelerator very shortly after Thanksgiving in 2016. And just knowing that, hey, the holiday season is going to be a little bit tough because what do we have during the holiday season, right? We have parties, we have dinners, we have all kinds of things that go on. And so when we surround ourselves and we start a new journey or we are trying to reach a certain goal within our journey, even if you've been doing this for a little while, it's really important to have a sense of, hey, I know I can do this, right? It's one day at a time, one step at a time, 1 pound at a time, really even 1 ounce at a time, right? And it's not a linear process, right? You will hear me say over and over again, trust the process. Okay. And I cannot stress that enough during this holiday season, especially. So, as we work through what that looks like, right? What does it look like to face the holiday season head on as you are either starting some new goals within your journey or just starting your journey altogether? Okay. And so we're going to look quickly we're going to look quickly at our reminders, but then move into what does that look like? How can you be successful during the holiday season? Because I will tell you, it may not always be easy, but it is simple. And if you can get the right mindset going where, hey, this is a simple concept. All I have to do is rinse and repeat, right? Apply, rinse, repeat. That's all you have to do during this holiday season. And I know that sounds so easy, and it is. It's so simple, but it is a little bit challenging. And so that's where that discipline comes in. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. So, as we move forward, so during this holiday season, how are you going to make sure what we eat, what we think, and what we do is on point? Because we know those are the 3 pillars for a successful program: what we eat, what we think, what we do. Okay. And then when we take those pillars and we apply the 7 step signature system, and I don't expect you to remember this all the time. That's why we go over them at the beginning of classes, right? We go over this information so that it becomes second nature, so that it does become, you know, it like the back of your hand, like I do. Okay. So you have the opt in. That's step the 7 step signature system. Congratulations. You have opted in because you've shown up, right? You are here either watching live or watching the replay. That's opting in. But the really beautiful thing about the opt in is you have the opportunity to opt in every single time you make a decision, because I'm going to tell you, you are not going to be perfect. And that's okay. You don't have to be, right? This is not an all or nothing. This is a better is better approach. And progress, not perfection. Every single time you make a decision. Then we have the education, right? When we know better, we do better. Okay. And so that's just the reality better because we're doing the best we can. And I think it's really important to remind yourself and give yourself grace and remember the best I can. Now, if you're not doing the best you can, that's where the third step comes in. That accountability is key, right? We have to make sure we are right. I still have accountability partners, right? I still have that accountability built in because that's such a key piece of the signature system. Then you have tracking, right? When we know better, we do better. But if we don't track, we don't necessarily always know better. Important so that you can have that accountability factor in there, but you knowing better, right? The education, you can see what's working for you and what's not working for you. Then we have behavior modification. Behavior modification, if doing was working, then you wouldn't be trying to do something different. And so we already know we have to modify our behavior. And we also know the best way to modify our behavior is to create new habits. And how do we create new habits? Behavior is behavior that's repeated. Okay, so we give lots of things that we're doing right, and we give a little bit of just accountability attention, like hey, I just need to do a little bit better. I've got to course correct here. Things that maybe we need to do a little better at. Which brings me to step 6. Go back and highlight your food log when you've been on plan, right? You write them down, write your wins down. Okay. These are things that are very, very important. Okay. Tracking those wins helps when motivation is lacking. All right. And then the last 7-step signature system, the 7th step is give back. We want to make sure we are giving back. We put the best version of ourselves forward, right? We show up as the best version of ourselves. We share this information. It's not meant to be a secret, right? It is meant to be shared because our goal is to help as many people as possible get as healthy as possible. All right. So that's our 7-step signature system. All right. Now, when we talk about accountability and tracking, what are we tracking? Well, we're tracking our nutrition, we're tracking our activity. So we're tracking the what we eat, what we think, and what we do. All right. And so, what is our Health Accelerator simple fat burn formula? So, every single time you eat, you should be eating 20 to 30 grams of protein, 5+ grams of fiber, 5 to 8 grams of fat, and 10 to 15 grams or less of carbohydrates per meal. So, this per meal is every single time you sit down to eat or drink a protein shake, eat a snack, eat a meal, whatever. That is your formula. Now, the only thing we look at per day, and again, if you're new, I don't expect you to remember all of this, right? We go over this constantly so that you learn and you grow and you start to remember this. But the only number we look at on a daily basis instead of a per meal basis is our net carbs. And our net carbohydrates are the total number of carbohydrates minus the total number of fiber that we have consumed that day. Now, where do our carbs and our fiber come from? Vegetables, right? So, our green leafy vegetables are going to be the most beneficial, right? Most, um, they're the lowest glycemic index of the vegetables, and they're going to lead to the most fat burning potential. So, our broccolis, our kale, our spinach, those types of things, right? They have a little bit lower carbohydrate content and then higher fiber. Okay. And so, this is where we are when we talk about um, our formula. And I'm getting some feedback. I don't know that it's actually presenting correctly. So give me just a second as we problem solve. I appreciate that. It should be streaming on the Facebook. Let me make sure it's not streaming on my personal Facebook. Let's see. Okay, it doesn't look like it's streaming on the Facebook right now, so I'm not sure. That's okay. I can go back and post it later. And that's okay. I do believe it's streaming on YouTube, so hopefully that is working well. Okay, so I appreciate everyone's patience there as we problem solved our new streaming platform. Like I said, I tested it, but I'm not sure that it's working, but that's okay. We'll problem solve. All right, so that is our formula when we talk about what we eat. Now, as we move into how do we prepare for the holidays, right? First of all, you have to have a plan, right? Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. We've all heard that maybe on more than one occasion, right? Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And so having that plan going into the parties, the potlucks, the dinners, all of those things is going to set you up for success. Now, I'm going to give you a couple quick tips here. So, the first one is make sure you are staying hydrated because what comes along with a lot of these parties is alcohol, right? And so, you're going to want to limit your alcohol intake. And how do you do that? Make sure you stay hydrated, make sure you show up hydrated. Okay. And what does that look like? So, our daily goal for water intake should be half of your goal body weight in ounces. So let's say your goal body weight is 180. So, uh, water intake for the day should be 90 ounces, right? Okay. So, when we think in terms of hydration, aim for at least that. And then if you've added in a workout or added in um, whatever, you add a little bit of water to that. Okay. Make sure you feel hydrated because that's going to curb not only the craving for alcohol intake, but it's also going to curb the cravings for those foods that may not necessarily be on plan. Also, make sure you eat a good size serving of protein before you go to the event, right? Make sure you are timing out your meals where you've eaten maybe right before you go so that maybe you just grab a little snack, okay? And plan for it, right? If you've got a party every single night, don't go off plan every single night, right? Pick and choose. Pick one or two events where you say, okay, I'm going to enjoy myself a little bit. But everything else, eat before you go. Take your own, if it's a potluck, take something that you know you can eat. If it's not a potluck, just make sure you are as well prepared as possible by eating a little bit before you go so that you're not starving, so that you're able to make better choices. And then look toward the proteins at the event, right? Typically, parties like that, if let's say it's appetizers or whatever, they're going to have things that maybe are just protein. So, like meatballs or, I don't know, the charcuterie boards, they have lots of meats on them. So, just gear and gravitate a little bit more towards the proteins. Okay. And so, that's how we are really able to set ourselves up for success. I've got a party coming up this Tuesday for one of the community organizations that I serve in. And so it's a potluck. So I've already volunteered to make one of the salads that it's like, okay, I know I can eat. I know they're going to have some different types of proteins there because they've already said, hey, we're preparing all the protein. Everyone else just needs to bring a side. So I know at minimum, I eat the proteins that are there in the salad, right? So that's how I'm set here. Now, on the flip side, I'm going to a party on next Saturday night. I have a party that I need to go to, and it's for another organization that I'm part of. But I, and then I'm also going to make sure I eat before I go. Okay. That's going to be key because there's may or may not be anything I can eat there. And that's okay. I know that I am not planning on eating there. Now, I just went to a party last night too. And it was a party centered kind of around alcohol. And so I just said, you know what? I'm not drinking tonight. I'll drive, you know? And it was no big deal. I still had a great time. It was still a lot of fun with my friends, but I just said, hey, I'll be the driver tonight. No big deal. And it was all taken care of. Okay. And so these are the things that you just have to plan in place. And again, that's where the discipline comes in, right? Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. Okay. A lot of times those things go hand in hand, but sometimes they don't. And that's where you have to choose, right? Between what you want now and what you want most. That's where the discipline kicks in. Now, how did I navigate the holiday season back when I started? Because again, like I said, I started the week after Thanksgiving of 2016, and I will never forget it. Okay. I had scheduled a call with Catherine, and I said, okay, you know what? We're ready to go. And it was on a Wednesday evening, the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. I talked with her. And then she said, okay, well, we're starting tomorrow. And it was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I kind of thought I might start next Monday. It was like, well, why? We're starting tomorrow. And that's just what it was. And it was like, all right, let's just do it. And I never looked back. And it was not always easy, right? It was well worth it because by the time I got to the new year, I'll have to look, I'll have to go back and find that food log and look back at it and see how far I was down within that first month. Um, but I was already got a head start on the new year. Now, what did that look like? Because at the time I was working mostly out of school with one particular person every day. And this was a classroom, it was an elementary school. And I still remember this. And this is where I said to myself, okay, I'm motivated. I've got this. I can do this. And I remember two stories specifically during that time frame, right? Between Thanksgiving and New Year's. I remember seeing a Cheez-It truck driving down the road thinking, my goodness, those sound so good. And thinking, but it's not worth it. It's not an option. It's not available right now. It doesn't mean that it's never available, but it is not available right now. And having that tiny little psychology shift, right? It's not a matter of what I can and can't have. It's just a matter of how much and how often. So right now it's not available. But guess what? Have I eaten Cheez-Its between December 2016 and now? I sure have, but I don't eat them all the time and I don't keep them in my house, right? And every time they're on sale, I don't buy them, but it doesn't mean I've never eaten them between December 2016 and now. But what it meant was right then, it wasn't an option because it wasn't on plan. It didn't fit within the formula. And I got hyper focused on making sure I was following the formula. Okay. And I remember sitting in that school after I drove behind the Cheez-It truck for probably what seemed like 100 miles. It was probably 5 miles, maybe 10 miles, but it was just like, man. And so then I remember sitting in that class, helping my client at the time, and they were making gingerbread houses. And if you've ever been in an elementary school class that makes gingerbread houses, they typically make them out of milk cartons. And how do they stick the graham crackers on the milk cartons? With icing. Now, my client had some developmental disabilities, so she's not doing it herself. I'm having to help her. So then what happens? You get icing on your hands, right? And then what do we naturally do a lot of the times, whether we're cooking or making a gingerbread house or whatever, right? We lick our fingers because the icing tastes good, right? And I will never forget walking over to the sink and washing my hands so that I didn't eat the icing. And that right there was such a win that one, I tracked it back then, but two, here we are almost 10 years later. And I still remember that story because it was such a pivotal point in my journey, saying, I'm in control. I've got this. I didn't plan to have icing today, so I didn't have it, right? And I didn't eat any of the candy that came with it, with making the gingerbread house, right? How do I still remember that story to this day? It's because I was implementing the system, right? I was tracking the wins, and therefore it was really motivating because and some of you know this, not all of you, but one of my reasons for starting and wanting to get healthy in the first place was I was always an athlete growing up. And then college gets in the way, and work, in your 20s where you're working more hours that are in the day, sometimes it seems like, just to make ends meet. But as I would be driving home from that particular client, it was about an hour away from where I lived at the time, and I remember having to always take my shoes off because my feet just hurt so bad because the inflammation so bad. Inflammation bad because I wasn't eating right. I wasn't drinking enough water, right? I was exercising because I already started powerlifting at the time, but I wasn't really taking care of myself on the what I eat. The what I do was taken care of. I already had the workouts for the most part, the weightlifting workouts anyway, not the cardio. That came later. But the what I eat was so far off, right? It included weekly pizza nights. It included alcohol intake. Not really, I've never been a big drinker, but it still included alcohol intake, right? It included just poor choices all the way around. So I get it. I've been there, right? And sometimes it's hard to say no, thank you. But that's where you have to set yourself up for success, right? I was very open and honest with those closest to me. So the people that I always go out to dinner with, they knew we're not going to a Mexican restaurant right now because guess what? Chips and salsa are my favorite. And I'm not going to say no to that. So I didn't put myself in that situation. Now, will I go and have Mexican food now? Absolutely. But I didn't for a little while, right? Again, doesn't matter. It doesn't mean there's nothing you can or can't have. It's just a matter of how much and how often. And for that season of my life, it needed to be removed, right? To get the progress I needed to get. Okay. But I will tell you, funny thing is, I still ate taco salads all the time that I made at home because that's a great source of protein. And I didn't have the shell or anything with it, but leafy greens on the bottom, right? Ground beef or ground turkey, and then vegetables on top. We're good to go. Totally simple fat burn and health accelerator approved. Okay, so I didn't deprive myself of Mexican food because I love Mexican food. But what I did do was I removed myself from the environment that allowed me to partake in too many of the things that didn't serve me. Okay. And so that's where you have to get very clear on what's serving you and what's not serving you. Okay. And having that plan in place, I promise you, it is possible during the holidays. Now, here's the thing. If you have one of your favorite things that you always look forward to, I want you to have it. Because what happens is when we start to take away everything that we love, or maybe the one you get once a year, right? When we start to take that away, that's when that's when it starts to become, and you start to resent it a little bit. And so I'm not saying don't have your favorite dish, but what I'm saying is limit it, right? So let's say you have something that you absolutely, so I'll give you an example. So there's a restaurant here at the in downtown, which is where the party I was at last night was, and they have this really great appetizer. Okay, I only get it once a year because I only get it when I go to that event. Okay, And I go to the event with the same people every year because it benefits one of our local charities that we really love to support. But I only get that appetizer when I'm with those people. And so, yes, we got that appetizer last night, but we shared it. And so I didn't overindulge in it. I made sure I stayed hydrated. I didn't drink alcohol. And I had a little bit of that appetizer, right? And it was all good. And so that's what I'm saying, that it's not a matter of what you can and can't have. It's just a matter of how much and how often. So if you're going to a party that you know it's your best friend's most famous whatever, plan accordingly. Make sure you plan to have some so you don't start to resent it, because then what happens is you may go too far the other way. And then you're going to have to do a lot more work to course correct. Where if you let yourself have a little bit, you count that as a win, like, hey, I still enjoyed myself, but I limited it. And I feel great today, right? And that's what starts to become motivating. And that's what was, again, continuing to be motivating for me. I didn't eat that icing with that client making the gingerbread homes, right? And so therefore, late leaving the school, I didn't have to take my shoes off because my feet didn't hurt that bad. Because at that point, we were like 3 weeks in, 2 or 3 weeks in. And so I was already starting to notice those physical changes. All right. And so I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get my shoes off because the tops of my feet hurt so bad. I didn't have that feeling anymore. And quite frankly, I haven't had that feeling since. Right. And so that's motivating. But that's why we track our wins, is to remind ourselves of how far we've come. Because when we can start to see those changes that may not necessarily reflect in the number, but they reflect in the way we feel, they reflect in our energy levels, they reflect in our moods, they reflect just in our thoughts, right? Because how many of us have had that, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I regret doing that. But how empowering, what? No, thank you. I appreciate it, but no thanks. And then how empowered do you feel the next morning when you wake up and you're energized? Your mood is light, you feel light, right? It's a great feeling. And that's the accountability piece that adds in. All right. So as you are preparing for your holiday parties, all right, number one, make sure you are staying hydrated. Okay. Hydration is key. It allows us to think more clearly, it curbs our appetite, and it also helps us make better choices. So hydration is key. All right. Planning ahead. Plan to have your favorite things, but plan on how much and how often. Okay. And then stick to protein and vegetables as much as possible. And then also make sure you're eating a good serving of protein before you go. That way, you're not eating everything in sight. And then the fifth one, which is so key, celebrate your wins. Track those wins, okay? And do not be super hard on yourself, right? Because again, remember, we get to opt in every single time we make a decision. So just because maybe you didn't stick to the plan completely this meal, you can get right back on track on the next meal. And that's where that course correction comes into place. And use that crowding out principle that we talk about, where you load up on the protein and you have a little bit of the stuff that's off plan. So load up on plan things and then save a little bit for the dessert or the appetizer that you like, or whatever that looks like. All right. You can all, I'm so proud of each and every one of you up and opting in and getting the education and working through the holiday season to really get a huge jump start to the new year. You are going to be going into the new year energized and full of motivation. Okay, so you can all do this. Super proud of each and every one of you for showing up, and super grateful for each and every one of you for tuning in and trusting me with your Health Accelerator journey. So I will see you back here next Sunday. Hopefully, I'll be able to get the Facebook Live resolved between now and then. I will do a little bit more testing and see how I can make those work all together. So thank you all for everything you do and for showing up. I wish you a super successful week, and I will see you back here next Sunday, 7 p.m. And we will continue to talk about how to survive the holidays and talk about hot topics that have come up between now and then. So, wish you all a successful week, and I'll see you next Sunday, 7 p.m. Bye, everyone.